So 1965's The Collector is another great little lost gem. It's not too overlooked to be totally obscure, but probably has yet to be appreciated for the film that it really is. It's a tight psychological thriller from William Wyler, one of the great directors, that was nominated for a few Oscars back in its day. It's the tale of a woman who becomes the crown jewel of a madman's collection, a study of sexual repression at the dawn of the swinging 60s. And if you get to see it, a movie with a sucker punch ending, which I won't spoil here, and a general air of unease that sticks with you long after the credits have rolled. Let's take a look. So, of course, the 1960s were an interesting period for damaged individuals committing shocking crimes. Of course, 1960s Psycho and Peeping Tom paved the way for a new kind of mainstream cinematic loony. And The Strangler and The Boston Strangler also provided ripped from the headline shocks. But sat between this, William Wyler was coming off a late 50s foray into the epic with 1958's The Big Country and 1959's monolithic Ben-Hur, and probably needed to make something smaller in scale. Between Ben-Hur and this, he actually made the criminally underseen and controversial for the time The Children's Hour. Here Wyler adapts the 1963 debut novel by English author John Fowles, the story of Freddie Clegg, Terence Stamp in, I think, his first starring role. An introverted guy who's won a large sum of money on the pools, and, as you do, decides to spend it on a picturesque country home, decorate its cellar, and then kidnap a young girl to imprison there. Now, the young girl in question's London art student Miranda Grey, played by the lovely Samantha Eggars. Now, she's caught the eye of Stamp's loner, and he's decided he wants to add her to his collection, already being a budding butterfly collector. His newfound wealth obviously fueling his urges to upgrade to a live specimen.
This is your room.
Get out of the way.
Please, don't oblige me to use force again.
I demand to be released at once.
It's no good shouting. You can't be heard. And anyway, there's never anyone to hear.
Now, as Stamp's character stresses to point out, he's not particularly interested in abusing this girl in any physical way. He simply wants the company, whether she's willing or not. He goes to great lengths to decorate her prison and furnish it and fill it with art that will interest her.
You've gone to a lot of trouble. All those clothes in there, all those art books. I'm your prisoner, but you want me to be a happy prisoner. Why?
Now, what transpires is a brilliantly tense and actually quite haunting psychological thriller, with Stamp attempting to keep his guest/hostage secure and secret from any unsuspecting visitors, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, for such an early film role from him, Stamp is excellent here. He actually won Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival in 1965. Now, we do get a glimpse of his life working in a bank, being teased by his colleagues. He's certainly repressed in a few ways, and anyone who locks up women for personal gratification isn't obviously of sound mind. But you still have moments where you feel for him, and almost wish Eggar's character would give him a break. As the film goes on, the game of cat and mouse between them ramps up, and we see Stamp's initial calm and calculated demeanour bubbling over in a few key scenes. I love the way that Eggar's repeated attempts to escape slowly chip away at Stamp's cool and calculated poise.
You said you'd let me go. You can't go back on your word.
I can do what I like.
No! No! No!
Now, my favourite scene of the film, and actually one that wasn't in the original novel, sees a surprise neighbour arrive and Eggars flood the bathroom in an attempt to raise the alarm.
You did say you lived alone.
So ultimately, Stamp wants Eggars to fall in love with him and them to both live happily ever after. I'm not sure how he imagines this would work out after the whole initial hostage situation, but he doesn't seem to mind too much about that. And exactly what he might do when he doesn't get his own way is what keeps you on the edge of your seat throughout. I wonder if maybe Samantha Eggars doesn't seem as hysterically panicked by the whole thing as you might expect. But maybe that's down to the fact that she's constantly cutting deals with her captor, negotiating a release date that she must surely know could never materialise.
Please be reasonable. Can't you see I haven't made all these arrangements just so you'd stay for 1 week more? It's not enough time.
Time for what?
So my only personal gripes with The Collector are its soundtrack for one, which despite being from veteran composer Maurice Jarre, feels a little bit too intrusive or sometimes at odds with the story, like the music's wandered in from another more upbeat film. And the other one, which is more of a minor frustration really, is that there's a plot point or story mechanism hinted at that never really comes to fruition. It could be a result of the film having a rough cut of nearly 3 hours and ultimately being edited down to about 2, or maybe it's just a red herring.
Oh, by the way, did they ever tell you about this thing? It's a priest hole. A priest could hide in here when he was on the run. There's a story that some of Cromwell's men trapped a poor devil in here and fired right through the wall, killed him.
Now, something like The Collector, its novel and the subsequent film, will surely have gone on to inspire Thomas Harris's mega bestseller and subsequent hit movie Silence of the Lambs, a man in a van picking up unsuspecting girls, a basement prison, and obviously the whole butterfly theme do seem quite familiar. If you're looking for a conventional thriller, you may be slightly disappointed as the emphasis is more on the psychological, although I'd argue that for suspense you can't go far wrong with our heroine's final nighttime escape attempt, a rainstorm and a shovel both used to great effect. As with a lot of post-war output, certainly from Britain, class plays a large part here. Stamp, in a late moment of frustration, goes into a strop over his inability to appreciate art in the same way as his detainee and her fancy friends. It's on the nose, but does highlight the effort it can sometimes be to bond with others, especially when reaching out across different social, economic lines.
It doesn't mean anything. Not just to me, to anybody else. You just say it does, because some professor somewhere told you it did. It makes you so superior, you and all your friends. I don't think 1 in a million decent, ordinary people would say this was any good. It's rubbish! Rubbish!
Now, the 70s would take the psychological thriller to new extremes, with Taxi Driver, Straw Dogs, and even Hitchcock's Frenzy, pushing the boundaries of what an audience can endure. However, for the most part, films predating this didn't require blood splatters or gratuitous nudity to chill. Just some great actors surrounded by a tone of dread and helplessness. Go check it out.
I'm never getting out of here alive. Am I?